Today's episode's brought to you by the Flamecord.
Drop the beat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I am your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow, and joining us today, our special guest of honor, Flame. What's up, buddy?
Not much. Been a pretty good week. 2 weeks, I guess. Quit my job 2 weeks ago, so
nice.
This is my second free Monday. It's been pretty good.
That's awesome.
Sounds like the best 2 weeks possible, if you're asking me. But
It has been.
That does sound pretty awesome. Yeah, I heard on the overview finally took the plunge, so that's awesome.
What have you been doing? Like working on Paladins? You've been playing that?
It's actually, it's been a lot of, it's a lot of Overwatch League stuff that I'm not really allowed to talk about, but
you're not allowed to talk about, but you certainly will. Because
there's stuff that is protected and there's stuff that's not protected, but I didn't do this super leap of faith. I did have like some things lined up, even if they weren't 100%, and I had options. Like I had teams asking me to coach, analyze, and stuff like that. So I knew that quitting was okay, and even if I didn't, I could have like gone into casting as well. So at that time, I kind of just I had a way to get money if I,
right.
after quitting my job.
Yeah, didn't have to go home. Didn't have to go full homeless if things didn't pan out. But I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping beforehand, so we can just go run through. We've got a ton of stuff to talk about today. What a great day to have an awesome guest as well. But I wanted to just talk about we had a new patron this week, Death, Matt B at the $1 level. So huge shout outs to Matt B. Didn't get a message in, so I mentioned to him he could have had Flame say something stupid, or at least maybe have him say something stupid. So
missed his opportunity.
Missed out. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. But huge thanks to him. If you haven't joined the Discord already and you're listening, just reach out to me, guys. If just so you know, if you ever want to support the show, you can go head on over to patreon.com/highnoonpodcast. You never have to, but it is a great way to support the show. So that's that. Let's move on to one of our favorite sections, the "What did we do last week?" section of the show. And as the honored guest, Flame, we know that you've had some stuff going on last week, so we'll start with you. Anything fun? Anything fun and exciting going on?
Started playing Soma. Soma was pretty good. I played ranked until the Mercy patch came out, and then I kind of took a little time off just to evaluate my life. It got a little hectic. I felt
they were about being a Mercy main for 1 second.
About it, and then there were games where I was like, "Is this fight still going?" You have to kill people 4 times sometimes just to get the fight. And then I was like, I need to watch this a little bit. Figure out what the next plan of attack is. Played some Soma. Streamed a little bit, and it's been. I just enjoyed the week off too. I've been just living without going to work, which is actually surprisingly easy.
So the Mercy patch hit, and the Paladin's dream became alive again.
Way more appetizing.
Just imagine if we could have hero stacking with the new Mercy patch. Would anyone ever die ever?
Would anyone ever launch the game? I don't know. Imagine Mercies resing Mercies to res other people. I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
We can make a custom game, and we can make it. I believe they've given us the technology. We can rebuild.
It's called the High Noon Podcast League. No one ever dies ever, and no one also ever has fun ever.
6v6 Mercy only team deathmatch. I think that's the new to 500 to 500. That's the score.
There it is, the new format revealed. But didn't you play in some sort of celebrity match?
It was a tip of the hats. It's like a TF2 community. It used to be. I guess it's still mostly TF2 community, but it's a charity event that they do where like they all get together and they do like these like fun streams, and it's like kind of like 3 days I think of 24-hour streaming. And it's all for charity, and everything goes to like One Step Camp, which is like a camp for kids with cancer. It's like a summer camp, and a few of the TF2 people like volunteer there. So they created this event, and now most of the TF2 people wound up, or not most of them, but a lot of TF2 people wound up going to Overwatch. So a lot of us like came back, you know, just to like help them with the event.
Yeah, a lot of familiar faces. I know I tuned in a little bit, and it seemed like they were playing a trivia game at the time, and it seemed like everybody was really picking on Sideshow. So I thought it was super entertaining. That was obviously really funny.
Sideshow's a character.
Yeah, he's like everybody's favorite pincushion. It seems like, and he just takes the joke so well and in stride. But yeah, so moving on a little bit here, I'll talk about what I did this week. I had a couple vacation days, so doing a lot of just VOD review and scrims and stuff, but I stayed in for my vacation. Also, the team that I'm doing some coaching for is back and playing. Everybody's kind of been relocated back home after the hurricane put them on hold for a little while with a couple guys from Florida. So I've been doing a little coaching stuff again. So a lot of VOD review. It was good to kind of get back to working on Overwatch stuff a little bit and trying to catch up to Flame and all that knowledge he's got in his brain, but that's why we just decided to borrow him for the week.
Yeah, for sure. And then for me, I made the mistake of playing Magic the Gathering again. That was just not fun. I did well, and I just was like, I remember why I don't go to real events anymore.
You tried to get me to join you like 3 separate occasions this weekend. And I
did.
Just kept dream crushing you. Just no.
I know.
It's dead.
I think if I would have went with Peach, if I would have played with Peach, it would have been all right. But I didn't. I played with Kai Burnett. That was a mistake. Not because of him, just a mistake in general. But we won't go too deep into the weeds about random Buffalo Magic the Gathering things. I already did a podcast about that many years ago. But let's move right along to our favorite, at least my favorite segment of the show.
Overwatch Today Meme of the Week.
We've got the Overwatch Today Meme of the Week, and it's becoming Death's favorite segment of the show too, because we're getting the Office memes. So we've got it says when someone leaves your team in a competitive match, and then it has red team as Jim Halpert that says my condolences, and then me, and it has Dwight Schrute in a top hat and tuxedo that just says keep them. So true. Although I would also, if I'm the team that's going against the lever, I'm definitely not giving condolences. I'm just like, I'm just so happy every time. Of course, I end up losing that match anyway, but
if there's a way to lose a match, you'll find it. I believe in you.
If there's a way to lose a 6v5 in your favor, I've done it almost every time. I think I'm actually unfavored in that exchange, for sure. But let's move on to the real meat of the episode, where we've got some tournament stuff to talk about.
It's tournament talk.
So we've got all sorts of awesome tournament stuff to talk about, but we'll start with the Apex tournament. So if you're a regular listener to the show, you'll notice we really don't. We never pay attention to Apex until this point, unless something crazy happens, because all the matches end up happening at like 3 in the morning or 6 in the morning our time, and it's just so hard to get those. And like I used to have all the OW. I'm sure anyone who's a member of the OW Discord is used to getting woken up by Slasher at 3 in the morning, just saying, "Hey, these matches are gonna happen." Like, this isn't my mom telling me to come home and save the cats. This is Slasher waking me up at 3 in the morning. Great.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure Flame's woken me up at 3 o'clock in the morning a few times with announcements from the OW.
That's true.
Unlucky.
I don't know where
Maybe.
It wasn't me. No, that's obviously it's fine. We keep those on. It's our own fault. We'll give you a pass on this one.
Yeah, I'm not giving Slasher a pass, but but the talk of the week for Apex was we saw Lunatic High get taken out, and it wasn't really close. It was a 3-0. kind of
Yeah, it was pretty
crazy.
quick. They have basically generally the same layout as Contenders and Flame. You can kind of correct me if I'm wrong on that, but there's once you get into the end here, once you hit 3-0, once it's decided, they don't really continue on anymore. They do stop before the last game mode gets played. But yeah, 3-0'd by GC Busan this week, and it was like you said, not particularly close. Flame, did you see anything in particular? Like, are you worried going forward about Lunatic High in this event, or do you think they're going to be able to rebound okay?
I mean, Lunatic High's in like this weird spot that I think a lot of the NA teams are in, where they're not really worried about their current tournaments because they're only looking forward.
Yeah.
So I can't really fault them too much. I think in the first match of their season, they went down. They got like dumpstered actually by, I want to say, MVP Space, and then wound up taking the coach of MVP Space later on in the season. But I think right now they're mostly like, I don't think that they're focused on Apex. As like dumb as that sounds, like obviously they want to win it. But they're making like weird roster moves between like Tajin and Eska and Guido and who are you, and like trying to figure out who the best duo of that is. But I think a lot of that comes down to them just also doing tryouts in the background for Overwatch League. So like part of me isn't surprised that they're in this position. I don't think that they're the best team this season. I think that they're like top 3, but I didn't view them as the number 1 team this season. I think Contenders Panther is still gonna reign pretty supreme here, but yeah, I like they should be worried. Like Lunatic High fans should be worried, but I wouldn't put too much stock in it because I don't think that this tournament's where their head's at.
Yeah, and they're also all like planning to, I don't know that they haven't yet already, but I'm assuming they haven't since they're still playing in Apex. They're all like planning to move. Like they have to uproot and leave Korea, head to California for a good stretch of time. So that takes a lot of planning, and it's just got to be difficult at this point for them to get the full practice and scrim schedule in that they're used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've talked too about how like when Western teams go over there, how much of a disruption that is to just their day-to-day life, all their scrim schedule, their practice time all gets kind of turned on its head. And I think we're seeing that work without them actually having to like live out of hotel rooms and stuff to add to it.
Yeah, and one other thing that we'll mention, and we'll talk a little bit more about in a second. I guess we could have prefaced it with the section with this, but Contenders Panthera now is merged with Cloud9, or now they are Cloud9 Kongdu. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next section, but definitely an interesting move there. So yeah, we'll update you more in the upcoming weeks about Apex, but as the normal high news.
The rest of the results we do have, though, might as well give them
right.
out, is we do have the 3-0 win by Kongdu over NC Foxes. We also have a 3-2 win by NC Foxes over Luxury Watch Red in the round before that. And also, we did see Runaway go ahead and beat GC Busan 3-2 after they were riding high off the Lunatic High win. So coming up here, we're going to have X6 Gaming go up against Lunatic High. Then the winner goes back to GC Busan. So we could see Lunatic High kind of have to face that same opponent right away again, within 3 matches, which is always exciting. And obviously you can't count Lunatic High out, but I think you probably give the edge to GC Busan there. Like clearly they have something that's working for them against that roster. If that matchup happens, Flame, are you going to pick Lunatic High there, or who do you think gets that win?
I mean, X6 is definitely capable. That group 2 is actually like so much stronger than group 1, I think, if you just take out Kongdu. I do think that X6 is like a very strong team. I don't know. Lunatic High is weird. Like they have streaks and they have like days where they just don't perform. Like the match against Busan, it just didn't look close. It didn't feel close. They didn't feel like a good team. But a lot, again, like maybe their heads weren't there. Like you're talking about them moving, like that's literally like 5-6 weeks away. In an ideal world, I think everyone wants to be there by, by November at some point. And then there's also the fact that BlizzCon's coming up in 5 weeks and half their team is going there as well. So there's like a lot of visa pressure, I'm sure, logistical pressure from their families. Like, by the way, we're moving to California for a year. Be back later.
At least.
So I again, they could lose. They might lose. They probably will lose. I don't see them getting to the Runaway match, but Runaway is looking very good. They're a team that's also kind of been struggling. I think they've been going down like 2-0 and then coming back for 3-2 reverse sweeps, but they just like somehow pull out wins, but they're struggling. I think, I don't know. I could see Runaway getting to the finals and then losing, but I could also see Runaway like somehow just flopping in the finals match of Group 2.
Flame, if you're not going to make the joke, then I have to do it. But they just find a way to run away with the match in the end. You just have to take the easy swing.
I didn't see it. I didn't see
jokes. Yeah. It was right there for you. But yeah, Blevins, why don't you move us into the contenders action, as we did have the big EU weekend this week?
Yeah, we had the EU Super Week, and we had the regular week to finish off NA. So we have the playoffs set, but we'll run through the matches real quick. So we saw. We saw Misfits take down E United 4-0, 1-2-3 take down Gamers Origin 3-1. That was a big match. Cloud9 eke out a win against Singularity 3-2, another big match. Gamers Origin beat E United 3-2. Team Gigante beats Bazooka Puppies 4-0. I don't know why I say it like that, but I love doing it. And then 1-2-3 beats Cloud9 EU 4-0. So what kind of stood out to you guys this week from the EU side?
I'll let you take that first, Flame, if you want.
I mean, the Singularity game with C9 was a little closer than I think it warranted. C9, I think, is going to struggle a lot in the playoffs, but they kind of got in at the end of the day because I want to say Gamers Origin. No, someone had to win to get C9 there, and they did. But C9 doesn't look that good, but I think a lot of it also to do with the fact that they have been having a lot of roster struggles throughout the season. Like, they were kind of treating it as a like tryout series, kind of, for their Overwatch League team before the Kongdu thing happened. And then now they're in this weird spot where they want to win, they want to play well because they want to showcase that they're good, but they're also like probably one of the least consistent roster teams this season, if not like the least consistent roster team this season. So like them being in the top 4 is kind of bizarre to me, especially considering they have like one of the worst map scores in like 13-17, but I don't know. The rest of those 3 teams in Europe right now look really good. I'm really impressed with 1-2-3 for like a team that doesn't have an infrastructure and they're just kind of a pug team. They're kind of like the FNR GFE of Europe, and like that's really cool. But like Misfits and Gigante, I think have just been on another level this season.
Yeah, definitely. And Gigante too is another one that kind of they started a little bit slow, if I'm remembering correctly, at the beginning of things, because they're a little bit of a combination of the what's left of Ninjas in Pajamas and then adding a couple roster members in to flesh out the core group, and they really kind of took to this new patch, right? It almost felt like when the new patch went live, it was like their time and they were ready to go. So they've been a lot of fun to watch, and yeah, it looks like according to A Smith, the help C9 needed was 1-2-3 needed to be able to take out Gamers Origins for them, and Gamers Origins, I thought, was in probably one of the better matches of the EU side of things against E United, and really on both sides of the bracket. We saw teams that were out, right, had literally nothing left to play for in this tournament, really, take a team that was fighting for a playoff spot to the brink. So props to them, as we've seen a lot of teams check out mentally and just leave this tournament early despite showing up and playing games. So a special thanks to the guys on E United for keeping their heads in the game, trying to win.
Dream crush.
Trying just like Renegades, doing anything they can to win and just helping the game and the matches be as competitive as possible. It means a lot for viewership leading into the playoffs in the next weekend. And we had a lot of viewers this weekend. I think at one point, going into the Envy match when Siegel hosted, we went up to like 26K or something like that viewers in the event. So that was really great to see as well. But yeah, a lot of really good EU matchups, and there was a lot. I mean, we talked about it going into this weekend. There was just a lot at stake here in every single one of these matchups, down to even just the tiebreakers, and what the map score looked like, as we see Gamers Origins in the 5 spot with a better map record than Cloud9 in the 4 spot. Yeah. So everything was very, very close, and it was really right down to the end. And a lot of the matches mattered, even when they're, all the teams didn't necessarily care or try super, super hard the whole way.
Yeah, one thing I'll mention about Gamers Origin is I was looking before the show. I was looking at Leaf's Twitter, just stalking because I'm creepy, and he posted a tweet, or he tweeted out that said Overwatch League recruiter talking to him. So I know you're a really good Doomfist. What else are you playing? And Leaf responds, Rocket League. So
Not just doesn't care apparently. Just no regrets. I don't understand that.
no,
result.
I mean, I'm guessing that's not really the case, but it is a pretty funny answer from the Doomfist main, who is trying not to be a one trick, but it's just
well, when we interviewed him and when
Yeah.
we talked to him, he sounded a little bit resigned to the fact that his lot in Overwatch right now, if he was going to make a team, would be as a Doomfist specialist.
Right.
So I don't know if it's just like giving up or if it's just, leaning into what his best bet is and what his best chance is, maybe to find a spot and find a home.
No, I mean, I don't know if we want to get into that, but from my perspective, I think that that's like the best way right now for a lot of the DPS players, because it's kind of like the way the scene's kind of split up right now. There's not a lot of good supports, like good supports. Like I think that there's like a big fall off between like the top 3 in each region and then everybody else, and that applies to like NA, EU, and Korea, and then the same for like tanks, to be honest. But there's a lot of DPS. And there's a lot of like, tracers, and most of the tracers they're either like top 2 or 3 in Korea, or like top 5 maybe in Korea, or like top 3 in Europe and North America. So like that already kills a lot of slots for these players that are playing flex heroes, or at least flex DPS. So I think like the players that are like one tricking Pharah and one tricking Doomfist that are like really good, even like Genji, like I think that that's like your best shot at Overwatch League. If you're going to do that, I don't think you want to be in a position where you're not really the best at anything, because it's really just going to hurt you.
Yeah. So if somebody's trying to break into Overwatch League, basically what we're saying is to make the most money, play support.
Or be a one trick DPS.
Yeah.
So
Someone had to say it.
So just keep grinding Junkrat, Death. Just you're gonna get there, man.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I'm in diamond now on my Junkrat main account, but we'll get there someday. Looking forward, though, we did obviously have an admittedly smaller group of NA matches here, but there was a lot at stake as well in these matchups, and we had, let's see, to start things off, the weekend began with Team Envy versus Rogue, I believe was the first one of the weekend, and that was a 3-2 win for Envy, and it's definitely the first time there's been a 2 in the other column when Envy's been in a match. So obviously that'll kind of, get your attention, I guess, a little bit. But I guess watching that one, Flame, did you think it was as close as, like, usually when we see scores and we're like, oh, it was a 3-1 or it was a 4-0, and we're trying to say like, hey, the scoreboard doesn't tell the story. Like, it was closer than it looked. And I felt like watching this one, maybe the exact opposite was true. Like, I felt like there was a bigger gap between them than a 3-2 win here.
I mean, it felt like it. You have to realize too, like, that coming into this match, Envy didn't really have any pressure to win. Like, they could have lost this and still been top seed, I'm pretty sure. And for Rogue, if they did win, they did make LAN. So, like, in terms of what was at stake, it was obviously a lot different. Rogue wound up, I want to say they drew on Hanamura. I think it was Hanamura, but they drew on 2 CP, so they get their 2 points, and then they get their 1 point, and then the Gibraltar match at the end, I think Envy just like either stopped caring or like, I mean, it was over, right? Because it was already 3-1, so like they had nothing to lose. Even if they lost that map, like they weren't ever going to lose the series. So that Gibraltar match was kind of like sloppy, I thought, from Envy. I mean, I think Envy knew that it was sloppy too. There was like no discussion around that match, but I think Effect said on Twitter, like, I was just practicing Doomfist, like we didn't, care. Oh yeah, it was Numbani actually that they tied, not Hanamura. But point being that there was a lot different of stakes, so the fact that it was close isn't too surprising. But Rogue did play a lot better, I think, and they have been showing that they've been getting better. But they had the disadvantage of playing from hotels for the first half of the season, which I think really hurt them.
Yeah, they were just in such a deep hole by the end that it was almost, I mean, given the start they had, I feel like it was almost a testament to them to just get as close to finishing as they did, right? Because the hole that they dug themselves was so deep at the beginning.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, they did do what no other team did and get 2 map wins against Envy. Like, you can't take that away from them. But sadly, you can take away their playoff spot.
Yeah, and the other matchups we saw here, we did see FaZe take out Invision 4-1, so I think that really kind of helped draw the lines here. We've been talking about wanting to get these top teams from NA when Invision was on their win streak, how excited we were to see them play against the top group of players here, and I think it just kind of helped, reinforce what we thought was probably true, that there was definitely a clear line between number 1, number 2, and number 3 as they get the 4-1 win here, and that means that they did draw a map, so I'm assuming that was likely to be 2CP. I did not get to watch this one yet. I'll have to catch the VODs later, but Flame, did you get a chance to catch that one yet?
Yeah, this one was, I think, going about as everyone expected. I mean, FaZe and FNR GFE are pretty close, I would say, for like the number 2 right now, if I were to like rank NA. Both of them put up really good series against Envy during the season. I think FNR might have actually had a closer series, or what felt like a closer series. But they have different
We'll get into that
styles.
more.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about that soon.
Yeah, so those two teams are pretty close. But I think that, I mean, I feel for FNR, their match against Renegades was pretty tough, but the way that like the bracket's shaped up, it's only single win for playoffs. And like, I don't know, the FaZe match went about as good as it should have gone. I think Invision had a pretty easy start to their season. I don't want to say easy, but there were a lot of really weird factors that kind of affected a lot of the teams in different ways. Immortals severely underperforming, Kungarna having like massive roster problems, Renegades doing, I have no idea what they were doing, to be honest with you, for most of the season. And then Rogue with the troubles, like with their hotel setup. So like Invision had a pretty good start, and they had like teams arguably at like their worst point. Not to take anything away from Invision, they played phenomenally throughout the season. But like I think that them getting the 3rd seed just like kind of screws up the playoffs. But I don't know.
Yeah, they definitely played people at the right time, right? If they would have gotten to pick their schedule, it probably would have fallen pretty close to exactly as it did for them. But nonetheless, it's just always exciting to see those players that you're not necessarily used to seeing around. I even liked early on, they had Christopher for the first week, and now they have Fact Fiction. So I liked getting to watch them adapt to the different tank styles. And Christopher told us he was shot calling for them, so presumably that means Fact Fiction is now, and am I getting that right? It's not Fact Fiction.
Numlock.
Yeah, Numlock. So presumably they're switching shot callers around, things like that, which is, they didn't necessarily have no adversity on their end either. They had an uphill battle and made the most of it. But moving on here, I'm going to skip one and talk quickly but just about Immortals versus Kungarna here. Immortals definitely got the win in there, and there was a little bit of information came out after the fact about how there's a little bit of drama on that roster that really, I mean, just reading it makes you understand completely how they deteriorated. And to be honest, I'm glad it wasn't them just like not caring anymore, or just like, oh, we've signed. It's not, it's not like that. Like internal and personal conflicts happen within a team. So there's no reason to be upset about them happening unless you're a fan of them and we're rooting for them. But so just something to keep an eye out. I know we talked about like what their struggles were, and there just seems to have been some differences between the players individually that made it really hard for them to practice together and work together. And Flame, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as what actually happened in the game for that match, not a whole lot to take away from or talk about there, really.
I mean, I don't know. Immortals coming into this was like the hot. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, Immortals so good!"
Yeah,
like they have all these great Korean players. Yeah, they won season 0, and like all these things, but they like really didn't show up. And I think that like the Kungarna match was, you would hope, right, that Immortals would win that match, and like it felt like a consolation prize kind of to end their season on a high note, but given where Kungarna is, I think that this match should have been a 4-0. I mean, to be honest with you, given the fact that Immortals is a Overwatch League roster and Kungarna is a pug team with massive internal issues.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this on the show before, like teams needing to win the games that they're supposed to win, and like, I mean, there was nothing at stake there, but it's still like it speaks. Even that one loss can potentially speak volumes. It's like if you're not winning the gimmies, if you're not making the free throws, like what does that say about the team as a whole? But yeah, Death. What's the last match that you wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about?
Well, the last one I think was by far the most compelling one of the weekend, at least from my end, being a Corndog fan. I was really looking for them. They had the home run here, they had the easy matchup ready to go, lined up for them. All they had to do was win, and they knock Rogue out. They solidify their spot. They're going against Renegades, who had a 2-23 map record going into this match. And we talked last week how I really, and I still think this, I'm less confident that they're going to be able to muster up the game to do it, that the Corndog is the best chance to knock Envyus out of this tournament, and they get to do it in the first round. Unfortunately, it's coming off this questionable performance, but we saw a change-up from Renegades in this matchup, Flame, at least a perceived change-up in my mind, and that seemed to be that there was, like, I don't remember Mangachu on an off-tank throughout the course of that match. Like, he was playing the Genji, he was obviously playing a good amount of Pharah, and I just thought Renegades as a whole looked better, and I don't know, I just want you to validate my line of thinking, as I've been yelling at them all tournament, like, just play him on Pharah, like, he's so good at Pharah, just use him, and they seem to finally do that and let him play the DPS, and it worked for him. They get the 3-2 loss here, but in the scope of the rest of the tournament, that was their best round so far against a team that ended up qualifying. So what did you take from that match, and what do you think Renegades could have done earlier to maybe, would that change have fixed their tournament if they'd done it sooner, I guess?
Well,
the real
they
question.
kind of got, I don't know what the word is. This match was close, don't get me wrong, but it was also, they're in like this middle patch, right? Like, they're in the patch from last week that doesn't have the Mercy Diva, but it has everything else. So they have like the buffed Orisa, I think the buffed Roadhog, and the buffed Junkrat. Maybe there's another hero that I'm forgetting, but it's relevant. So like Mangachu's actually, like, Mangachu's one of those players, again, where we were talking before about like players, like, how do you get into Overwatch League? Like, Mangachu has picked like all of the meme heroes to be his mains, and like it's actually like really smart from a career perspective, and I think just from like getting noticed perspective, like he does do well on the Junkrat, he does do well on the Pharah, he does do well on the Mei, and he does have his good moments on the Hanzo. So like for him to be able to pick the Junkrat when the Junkrat's at its strongest, like took FNRGFE completely off guard. And I mean, Buds is good, but Mangachu, like, he just like embodies the Junkrat. Like he takes it to like that other level of like, I'm gonna do some wild shit that they're never gonna see coming, and it's gonna work. And like that's his playstyle, and it works for them. And like that's how they won Li Zhang, was just his Junkrat. And like there was a fight on Li Zhang where Corndogs really just should have won, but Mangachu like dove into the point 1v6 and took out both supports with a fire barrage. And like that should never work, right? Like that should never work, and he just does it because he's Mangachu. No one else is going to go for that crazy play. And like stuff like that just worked out for them, and it kept working out for them as like the series went on. Like they ran, so like they won Li Zhang off of that, the Junkrat, and then the Farah barrage. Like that was, if you watch that VOD back, like that's actually like those are like the two moments when they win Li Zhang. And then Hanamura, they wound up like running this Junkrat Roadhog defense, and like you would think that Corndogs had like never seen a Roadhog before, because that's how the match felt, but it also was like, not only have we not seen a Roadhog before, we haven't seen a Roadhog that can walk around, heal, and take 50% less damage. So like they actually just couldn't kill a Roadhog with their composition, and like I think they went back and realized that. But that was just another one of those things where it's like, okay, you might be the better team, but if your heroes just can't, win the game against their heroes, then like you just lose. And it was 3-2, it was close, but I think at the end of the day, Corndogs did play better. It was just the patch definitely caught them off guard.
Yeah, and for reference, those wondering at home, that Mangachu alt is in fact called the Grouchy Desperado. Just for all the old school, what was that, beta? Was that beta when they had that team?
Yeah, it was beta 2.
Beta 2.
Definitely. That's the only pro team I have a winning record against. to let you know, if anybody's not familiar with the Grouchy Desperados, to let you know roughly how they performed, I had a 3-2 record against them in comp. So, a fun one to talk about, and had a lot of highlight plays. But yeah, they didn't. It's really been the story of Mangachu's career, right? Is he's just so many PogChamp moments, but yet like they don't pile in the wins, and they don't seem to get the finishes and the performances that they're looking for.
But they also, they also put him in like weird spots too. Like you have to remember that he didn't sign on to this team as an off tank. Like they just moved him to off tank,
right.
And so like his career kind of got overshadowed by the fact that he was playing this role that really wasn't ever really for him. Mm-hmm. And like when we talk about, people like Michael or whatever from Kangarna, but people forget that like at one point Michael was actually one of like the best divas in North America, but then when they picked up Bishu, he moved over to Tracer like more consistently, and then like they stopped remembering that he used to be an off-tank player. Mm-hmm. I think that's like kind of what happened to Mangachu, but now that the patch is more favoring the DPS roles, he can just like goof around on the Pharah, especially now that Mercy's going to be crazy good. Like Mangachu is like a pretty good sleeper pick for Overwatch League, I think.
Yeah, and honestly, one of our first guests, at least the first pro player guest we've ever had, so we're obligated to root for him, much as we'll be obligated to root for you to make it onto every analyst desk and get every Overwatch League position that your heart could desire.
Except over Hex, who is a multi-time.
Yes, yeah, you've got to show up 4 more times actually to have appeared more often than Hexagrams. So, there's a ranking system here, but you're on the list now, so we'll take care of you as best we can. But looking forward here, we do have the playoffs all set and locked up here for not next weekend, but the weekend after that. And let's see, that is going to be that is
the
October,
first weekend of October, right?
Yeah, the first weekend of October. So the weekend of October 7th, that's your Saturday that weekend. They'll be playing these out. And start us off, we'll keep to our usual EU before NA tradition here. We have Misfits versus Cloud9 and Team Giganti versus 123. I want to ask everybody for predictions on all these matches, so keep that in mind. But Flame, what is the matchup here on the EU side that most draws your attention, or do you think neither of them will be that close?
Giganti 123 can be close. I think Giganti has less to prove than 123 right now. I think so the way that this match is kind of slated is in like the first week of October, obviously, but it's also like 3 weeks out before the signing window closes for Overwatch League. So the players on Giganti and 123 have a lot to prove, I think, to like fans and just viewers, people checking out how good they are. And like there hasn't been a LAN. Like this is the only LAN that's happened since MLG Vegas, I think, that isn't like World Cup. So this is like a pretty big proving ground, I think, for some. It will be a proving ground for some players. Some player will get signed solely because of this tournament, I think, and that's like kind of the push for all of these players, I think, right now. But especially that 123 versus Giganti match, because I think 123 is kind of being overlooked, and I think a lot of their players are ridiculously talented and not getting the credit that maybe they deserve.
And I'm of course not prepared to ask this question, but I believe 123 has been like missing. Is it Fazix? I think he's been out for.
It was the last.
Bach? Yeah, Bach filling in for somebody. I felt like I'm not 100% sure. I don't know.
Bach was out and someone was in, and then Bach came back now. Okay. I don't know, or maybe I don't know.
So, I mean, that could explain, too, if you've been wondering why they haven't necessarily been 100% their best. I do think they haven't been immune to roster changes here. So I think they're getting used to that flex support role changing a little bit. So hopefully they can get some solidification there and just get used to the player that's going to be there. I think both players have played well. Everybody that's been on that team has played well for the most part. Nobody's really stood out as the reason for any of their losses to me, but definitely just team cohesion and getting everybody on the same page will help them. But Misfits versus Cloud9. Anybody wanna take the upset there, or are we all going Misfits? They traditionally do pretty well on LAN. I know the roster's changed a bunch, but what are we thinking going forward with Misfits and Cloud9 this? And 2 weekends here.
I'm always picking the Plupster to take down a tournament, so where my loyalty lies.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose that match, I think that they'll just disband before watching.
At least they should.
Yeah, that would be the most likely. Though they'd be more likely to find a spot as individuals than as a group. So. And we didn't get an official prediction for everybody, but I know myself and the Blevins are taking Giganti. Flame, who you got on that first one? You got to pick one.
Yeah, I think Giganti. Giganti looks ridiculously good now. I think Davin's been like incredible. I think Linkster's been playing a lot better on heroes that he wasn't known for, like 76 and stuff, that you don't expect him to do well on. But that team has a lot of synergy, and that team has a lot of like firepower.
All right, well, on the NA side of things, we'll start with the rematch we had from last weekend of FaZe versus Invision. That one they had the weird score, right? That was the 4-1. Yeah, 4-1 FaZe win. What are the chances here? What does Invision have to do? And do you want to pick the upset here, or are you just taking FaZe?
No, this is FaZe.
FaZe, yeah.
Easy game, I think.
Yeah, probably the most lopsided of them, although Misfits Cloud9 does definitely contend with. Depends on which Cloud9 shows up, right?
Like I think it also depends on I think for this match, though, it does depend on which Invision shows up. Not to take anything away from them, I think that everyone on that team has actually just been overperforming the entire season, and it's been pretty incredible. But in terms of LAN experience, they're definitely on the lower end of the teams that are that have players that have played on LAN. Like McGravy going into the season, it was like McGree v. Who, and then during the season, people realized like, okay, this kid's like actually really good. And I think that their supports are like severely not mentioned at all by the desk or like the casters. Like I think that they've been completely ignoring how good Fire is. Like Fire is like a Lucio that stands out, and that's like super rare, I think, in Overwatch. Like in terms of like the NAC, or even when you look at this team or the teams that are in these playoffs, like they all have standout Lucio players, and I think that that's like something that people don't recognize enough. But like also like Jaru, who's actually too young for Overwatch League, and Numlocked coming in. Like the team is actually really good. It's just if they can overperform, they can definitely give FaZe Clan trouble. But I don't think that they'll be able to topple Carpe or Raucus or any of them.
Trying to think if there's any other Lucios I've heard given credit other than like Harry Hook, and I think that's basically.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Exactly. Like
people
forget that like Boink is nuts, and I think like Joe Meister's like really good. And even like again, Fire. Like if you watch any of their VODs, I think Fire's just been like nonstop like on fire. Like they're just the Lucios in this series or in this playoffs for NA. I think is infinitely not infinitely stronger, but just much stronger than EU and probably even much stronger than Korea, to be honest, on the whole.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Joe Meister because he's kind of on my list of like most underrated players that I'm really keeping an eye on moving into the Overwatch League. But the last matchup here, I saved it for last because I'm gonna just go ahead and tell you right now, I'm waving the Corndog flag. I really honestly think that after watching their matchup not last weekend but 2 weekends ago, I mean they took them to the brink, Flame, and I don't know if you saw the same thing I did. You watch more than I do, right? When you sit down and look at a box.
They can do it. They can do it. Like it's not a matter of like I don't think anyone should be asking like can they or like will it be close. I think that they can make it close. It might be like 3-0, but one of those like 3-0s that shouldn't have been a 3-0 or one of those 3-0s that you wish was a 3-2 so you could just see more maps. But I think the Envy match, I remember, what was it? It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I remember specifically like watching them play Volskaya, and it was like the worst offense I've ever seen them do. But like they should be winning Volskaya or 2CP, I think, in general, because I do think that Bonnie is like actually that good at Sombra. I think Clockwork has been stepping up a lot more. Buds is like randomly the best player in the game, or he's like randomly like dead all the time. There's like no in between with him. Like I think he's so good and he can play so many heroes. He could play Widow, he could play Pharah, he could play like Reaper, McCree, whatever he wants at a high level. It's just some games he just isn't there. And like if he can be there like all the time, I think that they could easily do it because I do think that like Coolmat's really good. Muma's obviously very good. All these players are just like at their roles are really good, but even if they make it close, a team with no sponsors, no money, like just like a pug group that's been scrimming on their own time with no benefits, I think like that's super impressive to me that they can even take NB to any limit.
Yeah, definitely, and you nailed it there in just how good Buds can and can't be at any given time, and I really want to kind of put Clockwork on the same boat, right? Like he can stand up, and I don't think on his best day he's gonna match Effect, but he needs to do enough to keep them in there and keep them competitive and just basically like not be the reason that they're losing fights in a lot of ways. Because sometimes when I see FNRGFE go south, I really, it seems to me that Clockwork is kind of the first person to show up on the kill feed there. Part of that's just the heroes he plays and things like that, but at the same time, if I were to be picking out a player on this roster to try to attack, I think it would probably be Clockwork. So I just kind of got to keep an eye on him and what he's able to do throughout the tournament. But anybody want to join me on my ledge here for the first round of the playoffs knockout Corndog win over Envy, or am I all on my own? Because I would love to just have that bragging rights next episode.
So there's no way. I'm picking Envy.
If there was ever a time that Envy would lose, it would be this tournament. So I could see it happening. I don't want to predict it because I think that's like way too bold. But like I wouldn't call you crazy for thinking that it could happen, especially because it's just a team that has a lot to prove versus a team that doesn't. Like FNRGFE doesn't have an owl slot, Envy has an owl slot. Like just from a bragging rights perspective, just like a hey we can do this, hey we are this good perspective, I think that they should be more amped up to win this match and like feel like they can. I know that they're confident enough. There's no doubt in my mind. So, I mean, have we seen Effect on LAN with them? Have we seen Taimu on LAN with them recently? I mean, they're obviously all really good players. They all definitely have the skill. It's just I think on LAN people play differently and they calm differently. And it's a factor that we haven't had to talk about much this year, but it's something that will have to be talked about in particular for this event, because again, we don't get offline matches. Like we haven't. It's been 9.5. It's been literally 10.5 months since the last offline.
Envy
match.
played in Apex, which is LAN, right? So that I guess.
Nobody in this tournament has more LAN experience than Envy. I think that's definitely true. But yeah, so I don't know. You hedged your bets a little bit. I don't know that I heard a prediction in there, Flame. So I'm gonna hold.
I'll go with Envy.
Going Envy. All right, I figured as much.
So one thing that I that I thought of when you said it's gonna depend on what Cloud9 team shows up. I know you meant like how the players are gonna be playing, but what if it's literally Cloud9 Kongdu that shows up?
It would be the greatest debate ever.
Yeah, I mean,
I would love to see it.
How could you be mad at that if like they were all wearing the Cloud9 jerseys? If they like wore the Cloud9 jerseys with the actual Cloud9 EU players' names on them, but it's just very clearly Cloud9 Kongdu, like that would just be the greatest troll ever. I think they're gonna do it. Like here's the thing: their chances of beating Misfits are so low. Right, so like, just as the organization, just do it. Like, what have you got to lose?
I don't think they're allowed to. In all honesty, but
everything.
I think if you want to make roster swap, well, imagine if they lost. I mean, then suddenly like you start questioning yourself. So I don't think Cloud9 could do that anyway, even if it was legal.
Yeah, protect your investment. Even if you could, might do it. Yeah. All right.
Okay, so
why don't you move us along here then, Blevins?
Yeah, the wrap up here is no. I mean, Death is going off on a limb here, picking Corndog over Envy, but really, it kind of seems like everything else is pretty planned out for, at least for the first round. But oh, and the last thing about Contenders is that, and I know Death, you were actually we can talk about this in the break it down. So let's cue the sound effect here. Oh, let's break it down. So the segue from Contenders is we talked about it when we interviewed Logix about how we want an EU versus NA show match, right? We want the champion of EU play against the champion of NA. That's what we said, right? And Death, that's what we got, right? They said they're doing
not
an
what we
EU
got. We got a stupid, pointless, waste of time piece of garbage. I mean, a really awesome opportunity for these players to showcase their talents against one another in a cross-region battle to decide the fate of nothing whatsoever. No, okay, so
in a game mode that's definitely used in competitive.
Yes, that's very relevant.
With teams that are definitely signed to Overwatch League and not just a random smattering of players, right?
Yeah. So, Flame, how do you feel about this show match? Are you excited to see the team deathmatch of community pick teams?
Okay, stuff like this is actually super hype if it's done well, but it's really poorly. And like, there's no in between. It's either the greatest thing or the worst thing. And like, I'll give you an example. So like, I want to say it was like TI4. It's like Dota, and they did like this all-star show match, and it was like halfway or after the tournament when like teams had lost. So, like, the players were not motivated at all. Like, half of them had already lost, or they'd been out of the tournament. They lost in really heartbreaking ways. Maybe their teammates had already decided they were cutting them. So, like, it was like a graveyard in terms of, like, the mentality. But, like, I think the Summit did some tournament where it was, like, before the matches, and it was, like, or midway through the tournament before anybody had been eliminated, and they did, like, this goofy... the equivalent of like a team deathmatch, and the casting was just a bunch of people like memeing and making a joke of it and like pretending that it was like just a huge like just the best way to put it, and like they treated it that way, and it was hilarious because the casting was hilarious, the gameplay was hilarious, the players were upbeat about it, but like doing it after, if the casting is done seriously, or it's not like memeing enough, or like engaging the viewers to like turn the players into like clowns, which I think is like what they should be doing, then it's going to be really bad. So we'll see what happens. I'll reserve my judgments until after we see how it's produced.
The one thing I will say about this show match is that it is probably just a little tiny bit better than doing absolutely nothing. That's as much of a limb as I'm willing to go on for this one, because we do want to get a feel for, we want to see some of those players that we don't get to see face off against each other. But I mean, you're flying them all out to California, right? Like, so you're already bought the plane tickets. You're already putting them up in the hotel rooms. You're not even adding a day to do it. And you know, everybody you can just tell us, you know, this isn't part of the tournament. It's just a show match after the fact, but we're going to put, like, why wouldn't you do that? Who runs a tournament until there's 2 people left and then goes, close enough?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, from the background I come from, it's in the games that I've played, it's just weird. And I don't know. It's I want to see it played out. I want to see them face off. When I first heard this, I kind of had the reaction of like, oh, it feels like they're thumbing their nose at me. Like they're just like, oh, we hear you, and we're just not. No.
I mean, they've
no.
done this for everything though. So like,
Right.
I'm just kind of over it. You know, like there was a time where I would argue about it, but like they did this. I mean, this is how World Cup was run. I think it was fine for World Cup just because of how World Cup like was seeded and how like that whole like bracket works. Like realistically, Rogue playing China or France playing China at the end of that series would have been a disaster because they would have seen each other. And I think like going into World Cup blind is like a good thing. But they did this for E-League too. And I think that like it's just a testament to like where the game is. I don't know if it's a regionalization problem or if it's just like a conceptual problem. Like they're like, oh, we're going to run 2 tournaments at the same time and then hold the LAN at the same time. Because like if realistically, my biggest issue is actually the fact that it's single elim, not double elim.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know. If we had double elim with this, it would probably be really cool. But we don't. And like, it's kind of weird to me that like FNR GFE or someone might like, or Envision or, you know, whoever you expect to lose might have to fly out to Cali for like a week. It's like a 3-day event. Maybe you want to be there a couple days early to practice and then you lose 3 matches and you go home. Like, that sounds like super underwhelming to me as a player.
Yeah.
But like, that's just how it is. And I think that, I mean, Overwatch League is going to make everything better, right? So like, that's kind of everyone's mentality, but this event might feel super lackluster to some people.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like we're getting basically the All-Star game feel already with Overwatch World Cup. Like, we don't need another, like, All-Star game. Like, we can just have the, like, this is the American League champion versus the National League champion. Let's watch them play in the World Series, even if there's, like, not prize money attached to it or something. Like, just make a big, stupid trophy that I know Blizzard loves to do because they give them out to, like, all their employees. Like, have, like, a gigantic trophy for, like, World Contenders champ. You know, just do something. I don't
even think you need the trophy. Like, after talking to Logix, it became very apparent to me that, like, Misfits wants that, right? Like, they're the presumed favorites to win that bracket and be there. And, like, they want to face Envy. Like, it seemed very clear that that's what they wanted. Like, they wish it could happen. They tried to, like, make it happen a little bit. Like, they mentioned it, you know, like, hey, why don't we just play against the winners of NA at the end? And nothing really came of it. So I don't know. I think it's just awkward to run it that far and to get them all in the same room and then not play it. It's just weird to me. But we can move on anyways, as we've got a slew of announcements and Overwatch League news to get out here.
Yeah, we do. And I wasn't even expecting that to go off in that sort of tangent, but I know that you were pretty heated about that, Death.
When I heard it, I was not happy.
But we got the announcement, the official announcement that CLG Overwatch is shutting down. So a little sad for us, as we had Devin, the CEO, on the show. Geez, probably like 6 months ago now. Way back in the day. But you know, it makes sense for them, as it just doesn't, like, Overwatch League doesn't line up for every org. And you also mentioned that the other unsigned teams that didn't make the playoffs from Contenders, like Bazooka Puppies and Kungarna, also disbanding their Overwatch operations. Any comments on CLG and the other teams? Is there anything new here, or is it just kind of like, okay, well, we've been seeing this for a while, and this is just a continuation of that?
Yeah, I mean, they had big investments. I think they had like a New York MSG investment. I want to say it was just, I mean, maybe they were trying to get an Overwatch League spot and it didn't work out. I don't know anything about CLG's management. I just know that it's like really respectful of them, and I have talked to their players about like the situation that they were in going into Overwatch League and how the org was like, you know, more or less like helping them get into Overwatch League, and they weren't gonna like, you know, dick them over with buyouts and stuff. So from that perspective, I think it's like a respectful decision, or it's a respectable decision rather. And it's kind of, you have to see it coming, because I don't know nobody knows what the tier 2 Overwatch League or what the tier 2 Overwatch scene is going to look like in 3 months. And like that's kind of the big question right now. Like you know what Owl's going to be, you understand what Owl's going to be, you understand the scale that Owl wants to be, and then you know that like there has to be some money underneath it because players do need to keep competing to get, you know, into Owl in the future, and like people do need, there needs to be other events than just the league. So maybe they'll come back later, maybe it'll make financial sense. I think like fiscally it's no team wants to be spending money right now because there's, if you're not in Overwatch League, because you're not even sure if you're going to get anything out of it. And I mean that's just been the mentality of every org for the past 6 months. So like they're just at the end of it, you know, like they're at the tail end, and that's just the unfortunate way it went.
Yeah, I think that should be about the end of it too. Like I don't know that there's a ton of other orgs or anything like that. It's mostly just the pug team style stuff, you know, that you'll see. And those, like even Kungarna we mentioned is kind of disbanding, but I think you'll hear that name again in Overwatch. At least it sounded like it from Michael's message that he sent out. You know, he's hoping to kind of keep the team in the contenders or the open division bracket and kind of reform later on, as he recognizes he's not very likely to be on a season 1 roster, and you know, wants to keep an eye on his own future, I would guess, a little bit too. I would guess he'll either be coaching or playing whatever roster is under that name. So moving forward, though, we do have some dates announced here. Preseason starts on Wednesday, December 6th for Overwatch League Season 1. Then the regular season will begin on Wednesday, January 10th, and the postseason and the championships will play out in July. So we're looking at about a 7-month season here. I think that's a pretty good time frame. It's trying to think, it's longer than football is anyways, so that's nice because football always feels too short, so I'll be glad to get a little bit more Overwatch you know, than the football season. Yeah, football season is crazy short, especially compared to the other ones, but anyways.
Yeah, baseball is literally 10,000 years long. It's like the apex of sports.
Right. So, but I do love that they're doing obviously a preseason. I did expect that. I don't know that I expected it to be a full month. You know, I thought maybe 1 or 2 weeks, but I think it's really important to give the production teams and really everything the time to get everything together. But I think the most interesting thing we see from this announcement is that word Wednesday twice. The fact that they're kicking off both the preseason and the regular season, and they specified Wednesday as the day that they're doing it, tells me that that's going to be their Thursday night football, or, you know, that's going to be their kickoff day. It's always going to be on a Wednesday that the league week begins. So I know, Flame, you got your eye on Fantasy Overwatch League as well as a lot of us do. So I think that's the day your lineup will be due. So you're going to have to pencil that in. But yeah, so anything else you take from that, or did you learn anything you know, specifically about the schedule that you want to talk about, Flame?
I mean, I know things about the schedule I'm probably not allowed to talk about, but
right.
In the grand scheme of like the December thing, I think the preseason is going to be rather short. I think it's more of like a tech practice kind of thing, as well as just like a, you know, get used to it, make sure it works, because I mean, this is a big undertaking. Like when you see this Wednesday, you assume Thursday, you assume Friday, you know? So like, it's going to be a lot of matches, and there's not that many teams, but it's a lot of matches and a lot of content. And like, the thing that's biggest to me is that there's like, as someone who's been in like the player and the caster shoes, and like just an analyst desk shoes, like you realize how much better you get at everything the more you do it. And like when it comes to casting, when it comes to analyzing, if you're sitting at a desk or you're doing content for literally 7 months, everyone that is on the production side of this is gonna get so refined by the end that they're almost gonna be irreplaceable. I think that's like really cool, but like that's like the biggest thing I take away is that I think it's gonna be crazy to see how like bad or how like incomplete it feels at the beginning versus like how refined and how like well done it's going to be at the end. And that's going to be the real tell, I think, of this whole like Overwatch League thing, because this is only going to be the first season, and Blizzard's obviously planning like their second, their third, their fourth, you know, like everyone's expecting this to keep going. So this is like, I think that this first year is going to be so pivotal just in terms of like what we see, like what can happen. And like that's my biggest takeaway in just seeing the fact that it's a 6-month season. Like I think it, like postseasons in July, like that's super late when you think about the fact that it's only October next week. Like there's so much time, and it feels so soon.
Yeah, I mean, compared to the just like so long we had to wait to get anything at all about Overwatch League, It definitely seems like it's happening so rapidly. I also think part of the December preseason is like we said that it was going to start in 2017. So yeah, it's starting in December. Yeah, we got in there. We got in there. My real question is, when do you think we're gonna So we're gonna have the Overwatch League teams. We have the teams announced, the final set of teams. We don't have all the rosters yet, but which team do you think is going to feature Crusher 99? Like where, when is he going to show up? Like we haven't seen him in any tournaments. No one gets the stupid Crusher.
Dead meme.
Dead
No,
meme.
we
Okay.
get. I mean, we
I
get.
didn't know if you meant like I didn't know if you meant like a figurative Crusher 99.
No,
or
but I meant
actual-
like the literal one from this.
I don't know if there's anything stopping somebody from putting in their application and changing their name. Like someone could probably do it.
Somebody should do it, right? Because then they're already immortalized in like the commercials that they're probably going to reuse, or like it would just be such an advantage to like marketing your jersey and stuff like that you might as well do it, right? The problem is that you can have duplicate names in Overwatch, so like then there could just be, once one person does it, does like 2 people do it, then 3, and then it just becomes a nightmare. You have a whole team of Crusher 99s. It would just be a mess.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to make my splash into Overwatch League for sure.
Maybe it'll just be like the Philadelphia Crusher 99s. Maybe
that's
that'll be
just
the whole thing. Then they'll all have to change their name. It'll be a team rule.
That
They
sounds.
could just. I wouldn't be surprised if a team came out with their name as the Crushers.
That would be kind of sweet.
I think in like minor
Cleveland
league
Crushers.
sports, yeah, there's already minor league sports teams out there with it, so you might as well.
Yeah. Speaking of making splashes into Overwatch League, we got our second huge player signing in Seagull being signed to Envyus. No salary announcements or anything, but that's pretty huge, right? Like, Flame, what do you think about Seagull signing on? Like, A, coming out of the woodwork in terms of actually playing, and B, going on to Envious, which I didn't see it coming. What are your thoughts on the whole Seagull thing?
I don't know, like it's like hard for me to answer because I know him like really well and I knew about this like for a while. Not what his decision was, but just who he was deciding between and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
For him, I think it's a big deal. I know that he's wanted to play forever. I think most of the players, I mean, it's like a joke, right? That people that went to NRG, like their careers like went down and never came back. But I think like Seagull, when he bailed on them, and it was like kind of smart for him at the end of the day. And like I think this is like one of those, like he's now reaping the benefits of having left.
Mm-hmm.
And players like Numlocked, who like tweeted out their owl today, which generally meant that people were getting picked up. But like just seeing people do well after that roster, I think is like super motivating to me. I think like players that grinded as hard as Numlock did like completely deserve it. And I think like Seagull too is like someone that he kind of, I mean, he blew up, right? I don't think he expected to blow up. Like if he didn't stream, he would have been like such a top tier DPS, and like he would have been on some team. But what we've seen so far is that like the teams or the players that were signed are actually in like a worse position than the players that wound up not being signed as like the time went on. Mm-hmm. Because players got stuck in roster hell for like, or contract locks for like a year. Mm-hmm. You look at players like Mendo, who like signed on to C9 like in October of last year, got cut, and then nobody was going to pay buyout fees for the past year because nobody's known who was going to be in Overwatch League. So like if you were CLG, why would you ever buy out Mendo? And like that kind of applies to every single team trying to buy out players. Mm-hmm. So for him to like be in this position now where he could choose, and where he was a free agent and he had like this huge following and he was kind of his own superstar, like
he's the belle of the ball.
Yeah, like it makes sense for him to have a lot of offers, or to have had a lot of offers. But I think going to Envy just made a lot of sense too, just logistically, because they have one of the best like infrastructures. I think like Hastro has like proven himself to be a very competent, like intelligent, likable and respectable individual. And like he actually talked to me about it, and he was like, what should I do? And I was like, just like at the end of the day, you should really just go where the management will treat you the best, and where like you will feel the safest and like the least worried about everything going on around you. Mm-hmm. And so for him to have picked Hastro, I think and like the rest of that squad, like Kai and Taimu, it's just like there's a lot of potential there to make something huge. And I think that he realized that. I think like Hastro realized that. And like from an org perspective, I think it was really smart. From his perspective, I think it was really smart. And like I'm not too surprised by it because I like knew. but I think it was like a really good decision and like a very maturely made decision by like both parties.
All right, Flame. So the next part of this conversation that we have to have, you very well might just get to sit there and laugh because you know things that you can't say and it's going to be pointless. But we're left to speculate wildly when things like this happen, right? Because we only can go by what's officially announced and what's actually out there. So when we look at Envyus's Overwatch League roster right now, as good as Envyus is as an Overwatch team, it contains exactly one player, and that player is Seagull. So the other players, to my knowledge, have not been officially announced and are not officially on the squad. So we can go ahead and assume that they're coming over, right? I think everybody would be very surprised if they saw all 6 players dropped and a whole new roster brought in. But is this Seagull addition going to be just an addition? Is he the 7th man, or is he replacing somebody? Because I think when a lot of people look at that Envy roster, they see Mickey as kind of the odd man out or the weak link. And I think that's very hero dependent and comp dependent for that team in particular. So I personally expect them to, let Mickey continue to play the diva, which I think he does very, very well. And then maybe, I think Seagull might be the best Genji on that team already just coming in. So I can see a lot of hero swaps, but Flame, if you were on the outside looking in with no additional information, what would you take from that? And maybe, tell us what you think they would do, or if you think Mickey's spot is secure, because I know he's the one that I've heard might be on the outs if any of them are.
So I actually haven't. I mean, I didn't actually talk to Seagull about like whether or not he wanted to start, or that was like one of his things. Just like, do I want to stay on the bench? Do I want to start? I don't actually know what his deal was here with Envy. I mean, if I was gonna guess though, just based off the way Hastro was tweeting and like, they definitely want him as like a 7th man. I don't think anyone on that team is like really replaceable. I mean, if you were gonna replace Mickey, it would probably do detriment to the org just because like Mickey is such a big. Like he's just a big name, and it might not seem like he's a big name in NA, but I know like most of Envy's like Asian market comes through him. Like he's like a huge face, like the kid's jacked, like he's super happy, and like he just has like this he's like, I don't want to say he's like an ideal specimen, but he's kind of like he's just a good looking kid who's really good at games and also like very personable and like someone that you want to talk to. So like getting rid of him from a marketing standpoint doesn't make any sense, and like you definitely want him to be happy and like on that roster. And I think he brings like this attitude to the team that like other players can't. So even if his skill was worse, I think the other things that he brings to the team when they're playing is something that you can't really replace, and definitely something that I don't think Seagull could replace. So I don't see him replacing Mickey. If anything, he'd probably replace like Timo or Effect if they were going to swap him in and out. Maybe like they have like a Genji Tracer comp that's really good on like certain Koth maps. Or like, again, like you see Mangachu right here playing Ilios and Oasis, and you just bring in Seagull and let him play Pharah the entire time and say, you know what, he's actually this good, we're like counter it, go for it, try to counter it. And like you can do stuff like that depending on how the substitutions work in Overwatch League. And like, again, you've seen teams run Mercy Pharah into double hit scan. It's just like you can still lose. So I think that there's some value there. I think he'll probably just be a 7th man. I know that his stream is still very, like, he definitely wants to keep it going. Like, he knows at the end of the day that if Overwatch League doesn't work out, or if, something goes catastrophically wrong with the league, that he does have a backup plan to just stream full time and probably make just as much money.
Right.
So, yeah, like, I can't imagine him taking a starting role. I can't imagine them ever cutting somebody. And, like, that's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, and it was honestly very insightful because it's very easy for us in NA to forget about how popular some of these players are in the other regions, right? Because it's going to be completely different. And the most popular players in Korea obviously wouldn't overlap with America, but we don't necessarily know who those are. And I didn't really consider that. And obviously I think it's a really smart way to look at it, because a team like Envy doesn't go out and sign a Seagull without really caring about that marketability of their team. And that's the one thing we've talked about and said a lot is probably no matter where he goes, Seagull's gonna have the #1 selling jersey in Overwatch League in the first season. So that's a really great way to look at it, because it's obviously something that this org in particular is paying attention to.
Yeah.
And one more thing here, and then I think the rest of it is kind of quick fire stuff, and then we can let you get back on your way here, Flame. C9 picks up Corndog Panthera, makes it official, and inks that entire roster to their Overwatch League team. And that was interesting because their kind of Overwatch general manager, Alicus, has this tweet out there And to quote the tweet very directly, it says, "For various reasons, I truly believe importing full KR teams to OWL is a terrible idea. Hilarious if it happens and Seoul still wins, though." And he literally has now left the team one day after they signed this team to their organization for the Overwatch League, and he doesn't basically come out and try to deny that contributed to the decision, but he does kind of deflect a little bit and say that there's some other, and I don't doubt him, there's some contractual issues with other players, as you know, everybody's trying to sign all the top Overwatch League players to contracts. Many of them are already under contracts, so it stands to reason there could be conflicts and issues to deal with. But I don't think this happens if he's on board with them signing Kongdu Panthera. What do you think on that, Flame?
This is one of those situations that, like, even I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, there's a lot going on in the C9 world. Like, I think, like, I know too much, and, like, even saying anything is probably going to get me in trouble. So it's one of those things where, like, if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a massive backlash about this entire, like, situation. C9's in such a bad situation right now, like, and just from the players' perspective, I, like, really empathize with the players because they're in, like, the players that were trying out for this team, and then, like, they find out Kongdu's coming in, and suddenly they're not in Overwatch League, and maybe they thought they were. Like, there's so much really just bad stuff that happened here, I think, from, like, a lot of different parties and to a lot of different parties. And, like, yeah, like, I don't want to touch this. I don't think Alicus was involved with the Kongdu pickup. I think it's a really good thing for Kongdu. I think Panther is a team that should be in Overwatch League if I had to pick one, even over Lunatic High. But, yeah, this is one of those things that, like, it's either going to blow up in everyone's faces soon, or it's going to just, you know, get swept under the rug, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say about it, and I don't know enough to be dangerous with what I say, and I don't have enough connections that I can really offend anybody that I'm friends with, so I don't mind saying it. If this happens in football, right, this is like you hire a general manager, he picks your first round pick in your draft, and then you fire him before the second round. Like, this is like really, really apparent dysfunction in the organization if this happens to a football team. And no fan would let this go. Like, this would not get swept under the rug if this was an established league. Personally, I think it's a bad sign for the org as a whole. It shows there's at least a disconnect, right? Their left hand doesn't seem to know what their right hand is doing, and that's always dangerous. It doesn't mean they can't get it together. It doesn't mean that, you know, I mean, what they're doing is bringing in a full established roster. So now they can just go out and, like, bring in their coaches to supplement the coaching staff they might already have and keep everything intact. And we might not see a big difference in the organization, like in their games the first season. But it would make me very hesitant to become a Cloud9 or a London fan in the Overwatch League going forward, because these are one-year contracts, right? Kongdu might look at a dysfunctional organization and go, yeah, we're not coming back. We're going to find somewhere. Like, there's another team out there that will drop their roster and get us, and that'll probably be true. Or there'll be a new team entering the league, and we can just hop ship and go over there as a full roster because we're only committed for a year. Right. So I don't think it's going to be a problem in the first league, but they have to get it together, and they have to get it together fast, and they have to get everybody on the same page, or the public opinion and their ability to sign top tier players and talent is going to deteriorate fast. And I just think overall it's not a good look for them. Definitely, if I was planning on rooting for the London team, it would give me pause and make me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, and I would definitely be upset if you, like, so first off, you're a London fan. Maybe you're in London and you're rooting for the full Korean team. Okay, maybe you're able to get over that. That's fine. Like, you're rooting for, like, completely non-EU players. That's I can understand that. But then if you buy into the team, you like the London-based team, Cloud9, and then their whole team leaves, like, that's just, oh god, that would just have to be awful, right? Like, we're not at the point.
My biggest issue with it, from a logistical standpoint, is just, like, this team had a fan base. Like, this team, like, C9 had a big fan base. Like, C9, arguably, their players still have one of the biggest fan bases in the scene, like the X team, like the Surefour, the Gods, the Rulf, the Atom, you know, the Gregos even. Like, when you start doing enough of this, you really start alienating the fans, because as much as they were C9 fans, they were player fans, probably first and foremost. And, like, they're more loyal to the players than they ever were to the org, especially in Overwatch, where, you know, there hasn't been so many tournaments, especially ones that C9's been competing in. So, like, as someone who like, you want to root for C9, do you want to now? And so like you're, at least from an Overwatch perspective, and I think that they're kind of relying on their loyal, C9 brand loyalists, but I don't know that we have a lot of brand loyalists in Overwatch yet.
Not yet.
So like maybe they can use their marketing to like promote this Kongdu team to like the new people that Blizzard's obviously trying to appeal to, that want to come into Overwatch for the first time with Overwatch League, and they'll get fans that way and be like, oh, this team's winning a lot and they have really like personable players, and look, it's this team that wears Sailor jerseys to all their matches. Like they're a good marketable team, this Panthera squad, like don't get me wrong, but for the people like even now, like there were never really NRG fans, there were Seagull fans.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of the feeling of Overwatch right now. So I don't know if they have fans right now in Overwatch is where I'm getting at as an org. And that feels really odd, really awkward to me. There's definitely Panthera fans that'll come over now, but it's like you traded that. Like, why? Was it worth it? I don't know.
And it's a little unfair, but I mean, their brand is associated with the dumbest possible thing a team can do at any given point during the game. Like, it just, the huge, dumbest, awful to watch, painful to look at mistake is called your organization's name right now. So it's really hard to then pick up a Cloud9 flag and root for that team when you're hanging out in Twitch chat and like, you're watching a matchup that's Immortals versus Rogue and everybody's laughing about the C9 that just happened, and then now you're supposed to become a C9 fan. So there's a bad taste in their mouth, I'm sure, about that, and they might benefit most from the rebranding that is mandatory, I think, going forward into the Overwatch League.
At least from the Overwatch perspective, at least.
Right now it's making it very difficult, and this isn't helping. Like, they need to do things to attract people to them and to fix their image. And that's not what's coming out right now. Like, the news that's coming out is doing the exact opposite. So maybe they become kind of the heel of the Overwatch League, right? Like, they become the team to hate and the team to pick on.
Yeah.
I would never root for anybody to become the Cleveland Browns of anything. But
unless
they're kind of the
Boston.
early club. Well, yeah. Okay. So I take it back. I totally hope Boston becomes the Cleveland Browns of the Overwatch League. And I have no shame in that. Flame, please don't do anything with Boston. I like you. I want to continue to follow your content and follow your career. And just, think of that Samwise meme from Lord of the Rings. Like, don't go where I can't follow. That's what I have to say to everybody that I root for in the Overwatch scene. Stay away from Boston. If I have my say, they will be out of this league in 2 years. But thankfully, nobody listens to me when I talk. Anyways, yeah, so we can kind of move on here, and we've just got a couple other quick hit things.
Just calling out an entire organization and city, and then just a couple of quick hits.
Yeah,
It's fine.
Everybody's used to it. Like, they're not. I'm sure even the people at Boston have heard that there's this podcast out there that takes them to town all the time, and they just listen to me and laugh at.
Well, hold on, it's
I don't care.
For what it's worth, official statement. It's not the podcast. It is one host of the podcast that takes it out.
It should be the podcast, but you're a jerk. So, anyways, moving on.
I have enough shares in this podcast to do that.
40%.
Yeah. So we saw some Overwatch World Cup movements. So we saw Reinforce is out, and Snillo is in for Team Sweden. Is there any implications for this? It's like Overwatch World Cup. Like, does anyone even remember that tournament is happening? Like,
yeah, are we still doing that? When does that go down again?
If it wasn't at BlizzCon, would anyone know that it was happening?
I think
there actually hasn't been a lot of hype for it. Which, I mean, as we get closer, I mean, it's always a big event. I mean, I say always, it only happened once, but it was really big last year, and it was probably like, I think it's one of the coolest events that we get.
Hold on, were you at BlizzCon last year?
Yeah.
Okay, that's why you thought it was a big event. I thought it was a big event too because I was there watching it in real life. It was awesome.
No, I think we had peak viewers. I mean, I think it had like above 100,000 viewers for World Cup.
It does do really good in Twitch viewership. I will say that. But he's a little slighted because I always like pick on it for being an exhibition, and like it's just a little hard to like get hyped up for.
I wouldn't say this year's exhibition as much. I mean, whatever about the prize money, but in terms of like wanting to win, I think the teams are pretty stacked. I mean, across the board. I don't know.
The teams have been really good about it this year, like kind of creating some hype. And you look at like, what was it, UK was just the team that was like 100% swagger and just like kind of talking smack a little bit. At least that was the way
Christopher
they were
was.
portrayed on the broadcast. But I don't know. The teams have done a good job about it, but I don't know. And I think it's a very split opinion. Like, right, it's a polarizing tournament. Either you love it because you're super into the nationality aspect of it, or you just are indifferent about it. And man, it's okay. At least it's something to watch. Is kind of how I view it. But as you can tell, I'm pessimistic about everything.
No, I mean, I'm usually pessimistic, but like as someone who went to 2 of the events for the qualifiers, it's like it's really cool to see regions that you don't get to watch. Like for me, like I don't really care that the matches weren't super high level at that point because I got to see talent that I would never see. Like I don't sit up and watch the OPS tournaments. Like I don't watch the Chinese tournaments. I definitely don't watch the Australian tournaments, but like seeing their scenes represented and just like how their playstyles clash, or just like, you know, these random like players that you would never expect, like the entire Japanese squad, like they would never get another chance to show their skills. And like players from Australia are probably going to wind up on Overwatch League rosters. I'm sure maybe someone will try to pick up a Japanese player if like that was an option, but it's one of those things where like it is an exhibition match, but it does give you like an insight into other regions, and you do get, I mean, for me it was big. Maybe as a viewer it kind of isn't as big, but I got to meet all of these people. And like that was probably the coolest event from at least like a talent and maybe like a player perspective. Maybe it's a lot less exciting for the viewers because the matches suck when you're watching them, but sometimes anyway. But
there's a bit of that, but honestly, there's that with every tournament.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I like the matches were pretty good. I think all the bracket play was good. I mean, it was kind of dull some days to go through like a bunch of 4-0s, and that happened a lot of the time. But I mean, that's just the nature of the event. But it was still it was still really cool in my opinion.
Everybody will be hyped enough once USA knocks South Korea out in the first round anyway. So that'll build all the hype we need here in America, at least, to get us going.
If that happens, it just explodes and it becomes the best tournament that's ever happened. Like it's
second only to
for years.
Second only to Contenders Season 1, that fabled tournament where the Corndog took down the undefeated champions. I'm just saying, that's the conversation we'll be having in 2 weeks.
Hold on. There's
They're
no
done.
way that.
Envy's done.
But, okay, so even if that happens, there's no way that that's more hype than USA beating Korea. There's no way.
That would be pretty close. A pug tournament versus the entrenched favorite and top team in the
Flame, weigh in. Which one of those upsets is more hype?
Depends on where you are in the world. I think like honestly,
Germany doesn't care.
No. So you have to think. No. So this is something that I don't think a lot of people realize. There's a hardcore Overwatch scene. There's like a very hardcore Overwatch scene, and I mean from a viewer perspective. There's like a group. There's like a subset of the viewership that is really invested into watching like professional play, and they don't care who it is. They just care that it's a pro game. And like for that audience, the Corndog victory would be 10 times bigger than anything World Cup related. From a global standpoint, definitely the Team USA upsetting South Korea would be bigger. But for like the fans of just hardcore good competitive Overwatch, I think the Corndog victory would be like this massive, like great story. And if they wound up beating Envy and then somehow like losing to FaZe, it would be like the most disappointing thing in the world. But there's potential there. There's definitely potential there. If Corndogs win Contenders Lane, it might be bigger than USA beating South Korea because there is potential for USA or South Korea to lose to China or United Kingdom, depending on or even Misfits now. I don't know. We'll see. Like Sweden, rather.
Yeah.
There's still room for those two teams to lose, I think. I think people are underestimating China, and they're also underestimating UK. And maybe even Sweden now that Sweden's done some like swaps, we'll call them.
That's fair. All I'm saying is that there will if Corndog beats Envy, it'll be huge. Don't get me wrong, but we won't be talking to our grandchildren about that. We'll be talking about how USA beat South Korea in
for sure.
Cup.
You will be. I'll be explaining to them the story of the Corndog.
I definitely ordered a Corndog shirt today for Blizzard. So
see, I want one, but it just feels like it's got such a short lifespan of relevance that it just seems silly.
It's like hipster Overwatch clothing.
Well, you sold me. I'm ordering one right now. You sold me.
Yeah, we gotta find them. We gotta find them. We gotta find them. I gotta know what they cost. I gotta know how much. Because I don't want to be a hipster, but I kind of really want to be a hipster.
I only want them to be a hipster. I'm gonna be like, I don't even know what this is. even though I do.
That's great. It'll be the miracle on LAN if Corndog pulls off that. I love that blue crew.
Awesome.
Blue crew shout-outs.
We're talking about like top 10 tournaments or top 10 upsets of all time. Like it'll be on that list, and you'll have that Corndog shirt.
Yeah, that's true. Someone in chat can link where to find the Corndog shirts because I want one. Actually, maybe. Okay, there it is. Sweet. Okay, so that went a different direction than I was thinking. I didn't think we would talk that much about it. And then this one, I can't imagine that we go on a huge tangent about this one. But the Immortals signed CLG's old coach Cuddles as the assistant coach. I don't. Is there any deeper story that I'm not suspecting here? Is there anything big about this?
I mean, it's good for him. I think Cuddles was. I haven't heard any negatives about him. I thought the old CLG roster was pretty good. I mean, they lost, but it's hard to like blame it on coaching, especially when it's like a newer team. That was a younger team too. I think it had like Hydration Shake, Miso, Ice Shiny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did well and they were pretty well coordinated, and their ult spurt usage was pretty good. I don't know how much of it was him, but I think it's good that he got a new spot. I think it's good that Immortals is trying to shake things up. I think Immortals of all teams right now needs to be shaking things up the most.
Yeah.
So bringing in a North American to their coaching staff that has been all Korean so far is probably a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll tell you, CLG sure seemed pretty good while they were kicking my teeth in Contender Season 0. So, yeah.
And they were improving too. Like they started out kind of weak, and then they improved. Like they never spiked the tournament, but you could definitely see that they were like going from like getting out in the first couple of rounds to like consistent like top 8 finishes.
Yeah, when they got signed, it was like, really? That's who? Okay, all right. I mean, it was the 1%. It wasn't a team we weren't unfamiliar with. Like they'd been around a little bit, but it was just, I don't know. Wouldn't have been, I don't think, my first list. And then they leveled up quickly. Like you could see it right after they got signed. So some of that credit has to go to the coaching staff, obviously, as well as just the institutional support of the organization. We see that all the time. Teams do better once they have it. They get signed or get that added support from the organization and the coaching staff.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's all we've got. I mean, by all I mean like one of the longest episodes.
One of the longest shows. Yeah.
So Flame, the floor is yours. Any shout outs or sellouts or anything any leaks? I mean, you don't need to give leaks. But if you wanted to, you could. Anything you want to shout out or say here?
No, I mean, I have announcements coming. I mean, everyone's been pretty patient with me. I keep saying I have announcements, but I haven't signed any papers yet. So it's like I can't announce things until they're official. Otherwise, you wind up in some weird window where you announce something that doesn't happen, and then suddenly it feels really bad. So still waiting on my hype, but I'm definitely working on things. People will definitely be seeing more of me, I think, in the future. And there's going to be a lot more potential for me to be doing content like this, especially now that I've been, jobless.
That definitely helps. As we both sprinted home from, well, I didn't because I had the day off, but usually we're like sprinting home to get an interview in before the regular episode, and it's definitely crazy. So it's glad to hear. And we've seen you around a good amount. You make your rounds on some other podcasts, and you're on the analyst desk on occasion. So and you stream. You basically gave me like my introductory lesson into watching VOD reviews for identifying what to do to improve as a player. Watching other people. So if you want to give a shout out to your Twitch channel, and if you have a set in stone Discord link or anything like that, you're a great, phenomenal resource for people that are improving at the game. And I talk a lot about my experiences, and your content is in that list. So thanks from my end, and make sure you give people a good way to find you here.
No, yeah, for sure. Discord is Discord GG/Flame, and then Twitch is also /Flame. So it's pretty easy. Hopefully I can get someone on Twitter, on my side to give me some of that love. But I don't know. Most of it's just been content creation for me, but I'm trying to like go into it more again. It's just been kind of hard, and like people have been asking me like, "Oh, why'd you stop?" But like it's been dive comp for like literally 6 months, and like that's not even an exaggeration. And it's like really hard to watch, and like you can only say, "Oh, the supports overlap their ults" like so many times, or like it's always one mistake that makes you lose a match. And like I do kind of miss when people were switching heroes a lot, and I think it's gonna start coming back, especially now that we have, new heroes or not new heroes, but we'll actually probably have new heroes, I'd imagine. because we're only at what 2 this year, and I think BlizzCon's usually a new hero. So I'm hoping we get a BlizzCon new hero in a month. But
I think they already confirmed we will not have a new hero.
No,
at
they
BlizzCon.
didn't confirm that they won't have it at BlizzCon. They said it's not coming as soon as you think. So as long as we
maybe we'll get a Christmas present or something. But point being, like, as the patches get bigger, we definitely will see more swaps because people still need to figure out the meta. So maybe I'm gonna start doing more content soon. It's just a matter of when. And I don't like the fact that 3 tournaments are on 3 different patches right now, because it kind of makes my job like a really, really big headache.
It's really annoying. And I really hate the confusion of all these rapid fire patches, and I get it. Like, they're prepping up to be able to calm down by the time the league proper starts, right? So that people, like, I think it's important to them that when we're at home playing Overwatch, we're playing on the same patch that they're playing on Twitch when they do the Overwatch League. So I think they're just kind of trying to get it to the right spot to kind of calm everything down. But in the meantime, it's really annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing that we didn't mention before, is that the Contenders playoffs are going to be played on like old patch. So that's interesting. But okay, guys, this is one of the longest episodes we've had. So we'll close it out.
Sorry about that, Flash.
Yes. I mean, it was your fault for being such an interesting and intriguing guest host. So we were really just going to keep you on until you leak something, and you never did. So we're
But no, I've got practice coming up soon. I got to eat dinner, so we've got to let you go.
Yeah, but Flame, huge thanks again, man. Really appreciate you have an open invite to come on the show at any time. You're now forever branded as a friend of the High Noon Podcast, whether you like that or not. You don't get to you can't undo that. There's video evidence now. But that's going to do it, guys. Again, huge thanks to Flame. Check him out on all his stuff. I'll do it. Huge thanks to the Flamecord and all the Twitch chat viewers. There was a lot of you here today, and you trolled us well and also gave us some info. So thanks for that. Normal outro. I'm gonna run through this. Huge thanks to Match Reno for sponsoring our SoundCloud. Huge thanks to all the patrons and all the fans everywhere. You can check us out on highnoonpodcast.com. Every link we ever need that you could ever need for us is there. You can also always check us out at patreon.com/highnoonpodcast. The Discord link and all that stuff is there as well. And last but not least, a huge thanks to Adam Hook, who put together our outro music that you're going to hear in just a couple of seconds, but that's going to be it. Enough outro. One last huge shout out to Flame and the Flamecord community that came in and rated us. And guys, remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
This episode's already gone too long. We don't need an actual thing at the end. Oh, crap. That turned into a thing at the end. Okay, bye.